Mavericks, it's their first game since a report surfaced that Jimmy Butler is having issues with Brett Brown about his role in the 76ers offense. Butler sat out Wednesday night's loss and is out again tonight. Griff, stop me if you've heard this before. Jimmy Butler not happy about his situation. Why is this different than any other time we've heard this from Jimmy Butler?
Well, if you've just suspend the fact that it's Jimmy Butler, you don't think about what's happened to him historically in the past to get to this point. This specific episode is not that unique. This happens often. Players will challenge coaches in meetings during film, etc. It just doesn't get out. To me, what's significant about this issue is not that it's Jimmy saying he's uncomfortable with the offense, because I would bet Jimmy's had conversations with Brett Brown, where he shared these thoughts privately as well. He's probably told Brett when he came over, look, I run hot. This is how I work. I'm really competitive. I'm going to burst out once in a while. Come back at me the same way, because I know he wants you to push back just as hard. What's meaningful to me is it got out. And that, to me, is representative of the fact that there's been some discord there already. They've already had issues with the fit of Joel and Ben Simmons a little bit. They've had issues along the way where people aren't necessarily happy with the fit and role. And when you're 25-14 and you're playing as well as they're playing, it's unusual to have that level of discontent.
I agree with you. I'm a little bit worried that it got out. But we've seen the situation before with Jimmy. Some stuff has got out. My biggest thing that worries me, though, is this is Jimmy's third stop. Normally in baseball, they say 3 strikes and you're out. And he's had problems, whether it be with young players, coaches, other star players, at every single stop. There was rumors that him and Derrick Rose had a little bit of a riff. Same thing with him and Karl Anthony Towns and Wiggins. Now we see this here with the coaching staff. We see the situation with him and Embiid a little bit. Seems like they're going back and forth. I just see a lot of smoke. And for somebody that is going to be up for a maximum extension, you would think that Jimmy Butler would be on his best behavior. If I'm some of the other teams in the league and I'm thinking about throwing max dollars at this guy, that has to be a red flag. I have to start to consider maybe this isn't the guy. Maybe I go after somebody that's less talented but more tolerable in my locker room, because money just makes you more of what you already are. This guy has been here 6 weeks and he's already cutting up, talking about he needs the ball, challenging the coaching staff. What do you do and what do you think is going to happen if you give him $200 million? He might cut a slam full.
No, and I think that's true, and certainly because it's Jimmy, you do take into account the history. But I do think it's incredibly common for these conversations to take place and for players to be uncomfortable with their role, particularly when the fit of the pieces is as wonky as it is in Philly. Everybody wants things to be a little different. You remember earlier, Joel was not happy that he was playing so far away from the rim, and the reason they were doing that was a la Brook Lopez, they were trying to open the floor for Ben. So there's already those seeds of discontent. So what Jimmy then ends up doing is he makes the situation seem much worse. But I think there have been several times in the league where you thought it was a brush fire and there wasn't even smoke. And if it wasn't Jimmy Butler, I don't think this is even a story. But because it's Jimmy, that's the story. And to me, the story is it got out and they're unhappy winning this much.
I don't know. It just doesn't sit right with me, because he had the problem with Karl Anthony Towns in Minnesota and who was the guy. And now we see the situation here. I can't be used like, whoa, 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 whoa. When you're not the guy, you have to figure out how to play with the guy. It's the same thing that we experienced in Cleveland. Kevin Love was not happy with his role. He didn't challenge Blatt. He didn't challenge T. Lue. He eventually figured out how to play with LeBron James because he was not the best player on that team. I don't know if Jimmy Butler has gotten that memo that Embiid is the best player on that team. And that worries me, once again, if I'm another team or if I'm a GM thinking about throwing this guy money. Like, if you're the Lakers and you're going after Jimmy Butler, is he going to get in line with LeBron James dominating the ball out here? Like, these are all the questions that you have to ask yourself when you bring Jimmy Butler in here. He is costing himself money by the day.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with the costing himself money thing. If it gets out that Philadelphia does not offer him max, it will be a very bad sign. And other teams around the league will wonder what's wrong. And they will agree, well, this is a problem for Jimmy. But if Philly is going after him full bore and they're offering him max, I think that will be something that teams sort of mitigate. And Kevin Love, you're right. He wasn't initially comfortable with his role, and it took him a long time to find peace with what was being asked of him. He was still voicing it. It's just that he had a different style of doing that. He approached it differently. You have to know that Jimmy's going to be a guy who's going to be all fire and come at you direct all the time. That's who he is. So, again, if he had not had the issues he had, I don't even care that he's uncomfortable where he's at right now. It's fine. But to your point, because he's done it so many times, he could potentially cost himself money if he doesn't eventually assimilate and be somebody who helps them win basketball games.
I just think that one of my favorite boxers is Miguel Cotto, and he had a line when he was talking to another fighter. He said, in every fight I was in, I've always known what side I was, whether I was the A side or the B side. I don't think Jimmy Butler realizes sometimes what side he's on. He's the B side. He's acting like he's the A side. You can't come in here talking about, hey, I want to be used this way and I want this, that, and the third. This is Joel Embiid's team. You need to do things in a more diplomatic type of way. You need to talk to Joel. You need to figure out how we're going to play together. But you have to understand, everything runs through the big fella. And I don't think that Jimmy Butler is all the way on board with that.
So, Brendan, we've fully explored Jimmy Butler's side of this, but you see the Brett Brown quote on the screen. I didn't think it went over the line. If it did, I would have addressed it.
He has to say that, though.
So for Brett Brown going forward, the rest of the guys on the team, whether it's Joel Embiid or Ben Simmons, the other people he has to deal with, is this something that may hamper his job going forward if Jimmy Butler is able to speak out in this way and there's not repercussions?
No question. We don't know if it went over the line or if it didn't. But here, let's just say for devil's advocate, it went over the line. He's officially just lost that locker room because now no one respects him. If it went over the line and people think it went over the line and then he comes out and covers and says, oh, no, it didn't go over the line, it's okay, and he doesn't check Jimmy, now people think you're soft. And now what happens, the ripple effect is when Brett Brown wants to yell at Landry Shamet, he's going to be looking up there like, you don't talk to Jimmy like that. Don't come at me all hard. Don't with all that fire. And coaches slowly but surely, the trust erodes away and people just start looking at you like, yeah, whatever. And that's what happens. And that's part of this as well. Jimmy has to understand when he does this, it's not just about Jimmy. That's part of the problem. I think he's living in a Jimmy world and he's only thinking about Jimmy Butler. He's like the NBA's version of Antonio Brown.
We talked about this when they brought him in. They were absolutely increasing both their ability to be really good out of timeout late and design some things that opponents can't deal with. And they were also really increasing their volatility. And Jimmy brings that 100%. There's no question because of how hot he runs. I look at this, though, and I think a team that's this good, they're 25-14 overall. They're playing at a very high level in general terms since Jimmy got there. When you come into the season with the expectations they had, and the only thing that's going to spell success for you is making it to a finals or at least an Eastern Conference Finals, you're either all the way with me or you're all the way against me. So where this becomes interesting is come trade deadline, if they've got people in that room that are against them, they need to act on it because that's the one thing that unequivocally derails a season. This kind of thing is adversity, which is opportunity. You galvanize from this or you get radically worse, but at least it reveals something to you. Where this becomes actually meaningful, and I liked his quote saying what he said, but when this becomes actually meaningful is, A, if you're right about losing the locker room, which certainly I don't think you can say he's done to this point, but if they're not all the way on board with what's being asked of them as a team, then Elton Brand's going to have to start to jettison some of those pieces who aren't. And that's when this becomes intriguing to me.
Well, that's the problem. I think the pieces that you're talking about is Jimmy Butler.
Wow, they just acquired him, 21 games ago?
It was all good just a week ago.
Mavericks, one of those games, one of 8 games tonight. Also, the Raptors-Bucks, this game we're waiting for, 8:30 right here on NBA TV. That guy, Nikola Jokic, had himself a game. Highlights coming your way.
At the stat sheet, the 2 games that you've played them, highest volume of shots for Serge in against these guys. Is there something that they're doing that's basically saying, Serge, go ahead?
Well, they take their Lopez, especially in their 5-man, and drop them into the front of the lane, front of the rim at all times, and they're trying to cut off any penetration into the paint with size, and they're willing to let you kick it back out to your big and go from there.
And I guess the corollary to that is when I look at the points in the paint, you guys are well under your average against them too.
Yeah, they one of their philosophies is sell out on the paint protection, right? And especially guys that they wouldn't consider great three-point shooters are going to really pack the paint against them. So our challenge will be to score some paint points and get to the free throw line tonight, and we're going to have to shoot over the top of them, and we're going to have to make some.
What do you do about Lopez defensively? Would you go small on him? I mean, he's basically the world's biggest two-guard at this point, right?
Even best shooters in the league, right? I mean, without a doubt, the way he's shooting them and where he's shooting them from and how quick he's releasing them and all the – I'm more fascinated all the styles he's got. He'll pump fake you and slide step you and slide left, slide right, shoot him from 35 feet. And he had a game up there. He really was a difference maker. We were just about ready to get that thing under control a couple times, and he hit a couple shot clock ending bombs that were I wouldn't say they were soul destroying, but they hurt our spirit a little bit. Yeah. Yeah, for the moment. Yeah.
If as Michael said, if you go with a smaller guy on him, do you fear that all of a sudden he turns into a big man again? He goes down
He's certainly capable of that, and he's been doing that a little bit more, either via the slow drive back down, or in a pick and roll situation where they'll advance it forward or behind and punch it into him, and he's still really good there, right? He was. Yeah. I don't know. My memory's not very good, but it seems like not very long ago they were throwing it in for 30-point nights on the block all night with Brooklyn, right? So he's still very good there with the right-handed hook and his size and all that stuff. We worry about all that because the worst part is if you send a big out to him, then your rim protection's suffering, right? And they're killing people at the rim. If you send a small on him, then you're I don't know what you're doing with your other big, right? Yeah. It's almost like we'd end up with those matchups a year ago with Serge guarding J.R. Smith or something like that, and that wasn't very good either. So I don't know. We're just going to try to play a pretty straightforward defensive package, and ask our guys to do multiple things. We got to ask our fives to protect the rim if there's penetration coming, and skedaddle back out there as fast as they can to challenge the threes.
How's Kyle doing?
He's doing very well. Yes, thank you. He will not play tonight, but he's doing very well.
And Jonas? How's Jonas doing?
Jonas is doing pretty good, right? He's still a ways away, but he's pretty active, right? I think we're maybe ahead of schedule. I think they originally said 8 to 12 weeks, but he's out of the cast a little earlier than we thought. He's just got a little kind of splint on there. He's in full practice as long as it isn't contact. He's running up and down, he's shooting, he's handling the ball, all those kind of things. So he's doing good too.
Do you have any idea? We're at another back-to-back. Do you have any idea about Kawhi?
Do not at this point. We'll take it and see how this game goes and see how he feels after tonight, and planning on rolling with him, right? Unless something changes after the game tonight.
How do you feel this conference is sort of shaken out compared to how the season began? There were a lot of cracks about the Eastern Conference, sort of a second-tier conference, and yet we see teams that have records that are as good as the West, performances that obviously winning against the West. What do you make of the field?
Well, I think the field is very good. I've said this before. I think the East gets a little too much slighted a little bit, and it's probably because some of the bottom teams will even though they're dangerous on any night, we'll have some like last night. You'll have a game that's 30 at halftime or something like that, and you don't see that often on the other side, Western Conference. I think obviously they run, even now that Phoenix is healthy, they're running 1 through 15 pretty tough night in, night out. But I think the teams are really good. I think all the way through, there's some dangerous teams that I think will line up and look the Western Conference teams right in the eyes. I mean, I really do.
Do you think that the run heading west sort of energized some of the teams that they okay, that guy's got his foot off?
But it certainly should have. It should have energized organizations in the East, right? It should have. You look and say, well, Toronto's up there and Milwaukee, and we can play with those teams if we can upgrade a little bit and develop our younger players a little quicker and things like that. I think it certainly should have energized and has, yeah.
The Bucks traded for George Hill right when they were in Toronto. Since that last month, the Bucks defensive, that second unit has really turned into a strong defensive unit. You've been a part of some special bench units in Toronto. Just what does it mean when a bench can forge some sort of identity, whether it's offensive or defensive?
Well, we went through it last year. We had that great second unit last year, and it was huge for us. It carried us really a long ways deep into the season with being able to crack off as many wins as we could. I mean, there was a stretch there in the, I don't know, March that our bench was coming in midway through the third quarter and never coming out again. You know, so it was giving our veteran guys some rest, and they were just playing that good. I mean, I'm impressed with the roster this organization has put together. There's a lot of guys they throw in there. They're all producing, and then that wave of guys goes out, and sometimes they go to the third wave of guys, and those are still some pretty good players coming in there. So they've done a